I recently saw Elijah Peel at the theater. I had actually heard nothing about this film. I watched it because it was the only film I could squeeze in before the Regal Mystery movie. So I went into this one completely blind. I did not realize this is a religion, faith-based movie. The plot follows the life of a drug-addicted rock star who is in the hospital after some benders, and he is just kind of depressed, just going through life, just feeling very hit, and doesn't really know what his purpose is. He um, builds this relationship with a young girl who is dying of cancer, and basically the plot is their relationship and how that kind of helps him break his addiction and kind of change his direction in life. And obviously, there's a spiritual element to this too, with this being a Christian film. This is marketed as being based on a true story. From what I could read, this is quite the stretch. This is not a real person. This is not someone who has ever existed. It is very loosely based on the writer-director's struggles with addiction and spirituality. And this is just a very heavily dramatized version of this. It is basically pure fiction. It's just inspired by that individual's life story. So the marketing is kind of misleading there. I did have a good time with this overall. Again, I went in completely blind, had no clue what to expect. Unlike many of the recent influx of theatrical faith-based films, this one is not so overtly trying to be a sermon that I think this can appeal to people that possibly aren't even religious or from different religions. I still think the goal of this film is probably, to convert more people to the Christian faith. However, there's enough of an actual plot here and characters to root for that I think you could have a good time, like regardless of what your views are. I do think the relationship between our drug-addicted rock star and the child is pretty interesting. It is a little bit weird at times, and the film even kind of commentates on this a little bit about how this relationship might be perceived. I have some mixed feelings on how that's dealt with, but I did think it was an engaging film through and through. One thing that actually surprised me about this is being about a rock star, there is music in the film. This actually has surprisingly good music in it. Whoever did the soundtrack for this was surprisingly competent, and this individual is actually a really good singer. Usually in movies like this, it feels like the music's kind of an afterthought, kind of tacked on indie to such a degree that like you're not even sure if these people have a background in music. But here it actually sounded like real music. It was honestly like good to listen to. I have seen some people try and say that this film is emotionally manipulative. Obviously, our deuteragonist is a child who is dying of cancer. I've never really got this seems to be a growing criticism amongst like the movie forum sphere, where people are calling things manipulative. I agree that things can be done in a way that feels cheap, but the idea that art manipulating you is bad is not something I would agree with. Obviously, you want art to make you feel something, and there are tools and cliches to do that. I don't think it's necessarily bad for a film to be manipulative, given that that's literally what it's trying to do. I was definitely getting a little bit emotional at some parts. The ending especially uses a kind of plot device that I think some people are either going to love or hate, and that'll also kind of determine how you feel about it. I thought both of our actors were fairly decent. She does pretty well as a child actor. There are some parts where she kind of like pauses in very unnatural ways, but I think this is about like as good as you can get for this age range, really. There is some stuff that's visually interesting. There are a couple, not necessarily drug trips, but moments where our character is not sober, and it's kind of presented in an interesting way. Most of this film takes place at a hospital, but we do hop around settings a little bit. I think this is an enjoyable film if you're just looking for something to watch. I think it will play better to people with more religiosity, though I think the themes here are definitely universal enough that even those who are non-religious or coming from other religions could definitely get something out of it too. I had a decent time with Elijah Peel. I gave it a 3 out of 6.
3 out of 6.